I am going to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Althea Rizzo. She's the Geologic Hazards Program Coordinator at the Oregon Department of Emergency Management. Her work over the last 2 decades has focused on disaster risk reduction, community resilience, and the integration of human systems research into public policy and emergency management. Now, I know why Malika asked me to introduce her. These are topics very close to my heart and my work. Please go ahead, Dr. Rizzo. We can
Althea,
see your screen.
Yeah, Althea, I don't know if you've unmuted yourself. We can't hear you. I know Althea was.
Oh. You know, at some point we should probably learn how to turn the mute button off. Okay, so thank you again for this opportunity to come talk to you about the Kamchatka tsunami that happened this last summer. Go ahead to the next slide. So when we are looking at our response to a tsunami like this, there's a lot of things that feed into our response. And the USGS has sort of a handy primer here of a lot of the things and the types of information that we look for during a response. You know, the first one is where did this happen and how big is it was? And then we're looking at you know, how many people may have felt it. Now, this information comes in over time afterwards, but this is the kind of thing that we're looking for. How big is big and where did it happen? So it happened in Kamchatka, which is a very long ways away from where Oregon is, so that we knew that when this happened, there would be hours before any arrival at the Oregon coast. In 2011, it was between 9 and 10 hours from Japan. So we were expecting this to take a little bit longer than that. Some of the other things that we factor into our response is, you know, who's living in the hazard area and who may need to be informed that there is a tsunami possibly happening. And then we factor into, you know, how big is the tsunami possibly, when's it going to arrive, what kind, what's the tidal, where is it, high tide, low tide? Is it during a storm so that we might have a storm surge on top of a tsunami surge? So there are a lot of different factors that we have to kind of pull together really quickly when one of these events happen, because this information goes out to all of our collaborating partners at the same time. So when the earthquake happens, our partners are getting the information that the earthquake happens. When a tsunami product like a alert, a warning, watch, or an advisory is sent out, a lot of our partners are getting that information at the same time. So at OEM, we're trying to pull all of these different pieces of information together because we know that people are going to be asking us about it very, very soon. So next slide, please. So when we're looking at the day, it happened at about 4:20 our time. And this is around when a lot of our folks are leaving for the day. So the timing was fortuitous in that a lot of our folks were still there, but some of our folks had already left, myself included. And there was a tsunami watch that was issued a little bit after 5 o'clock. And at 5:30, I was called back into the office to start response. And so when I came in, you know, I started looking at the tide gauges. I looked at what the weather's doing over there. It was, you know, during a summer day, so we knew that the likelihood of the transient population, our visitors to the coast, those numbers would be higher. And when we have our first coordination call, this is our Emergency Coordination Center sends out information that we're going to have a coordination call. And this is where all of our local emergency managers, our first responders, all of the people who are involved in our emergency support functions like communications, fuel, power, mass care, they all call in so that we're sharing the information with everybody at the same time. And then around 6:30, we changed from a watch to an advisory. So when we're in a watch situation, this kind of means we don't really know if a tsunami is going to reach us or not. And this is sort of our get ready period. When we heard that it was going to be an advisory, this means that we need to start taking action. In when the Tsunami Warning Center up in Palmer, Alaska, sends out these advisories, that means the tsunami is going to be up to a meter high. If it was going to be over a meter, we would have gotten a warning. An advisory generally means we're not going to have inundation on land, but we're going to see strong currents in bays and harbors. So it's really important to get people off their boats, get people off the beaches, and get them out of the ports and harbors. Now, there was at least 10 hours before it was going to arrive in Oregon. So some of our fisheries folk did decide to take their boats out to a safe depth. And when it kicks into an advisory, that means that we're looking at doing some evacuation. And our local partners, whether they're the counties on the coast or the state police or the state parks, they are sort of in control of what happens locally in their jurisdictions. So I can't tell them to evacuate. That is a local decision. We had another state coordination call at 7 o'clock. And we held those kinds of coordination calls throughout the evening. And between our coordination calls that OEM was having with folks in Oregon, the National Tsunami Warning Center was also having coordination calls to share the most recent information about the tsunami, what kind of observed heights have we been seeing, any updates to wave arrival time or updates to expected amplitudes. Those first waves arrived about 11:30 at night, and this was rather fortunate because there weren't a lot of people on the beaches that would have been affected by this. And so we saw waves about 1 to 2 feet high. So it was not terribly impactful, but we did see very strong currents in our bays and harbors. And just to the south of us, California, you can kind of see that one finger of red energy hitting the coast. That was California. And they had a much bigger effect from this. And so they have far more people that they have to evacuate. And so, we were watching a lot of what they were doing and sharing as much information as possible as things came through. So next slide. So when we were looking at this response during this event, there's a whole bunch of different ways that we can share information. First of all, we have the NOAA National Weather Service coordination calls. For us, we turn to the National Tsunami Warning Center in Palmer, Alaska. Folks who are in the Pacific and South Pacific look to the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center. And so they have these coordination calls about once an hour or whenever they're expecting big updates of information. We have those coordination calls. But the Weather Service also has a Slack channel that they share information on. They have one Slack channel that's a little bit more open, and some of the public can reach into that Slack channel, but they also have a Slack channel that's just for emergency managers and responders. And that was a really efficient way to share information. In the past, we've done teleconferences, mass calls in on the telephone. Luckily with technology today, we can use Teams meetings and have shared graphical information, not just, numbered data. Another way that we were sharing information, and this was internal to OEM and to our cooperating partners, is there's the Homeland Security Information Network, or what we call HISN rooms. And this is another way for us to provide information quickly during the event. We had a number of the emergency managers who were attending in that room. And so I would say, updates on when the arrival time, what kind of observations have been seen, closer to where the tsunami started. And so those were really efficient ways to share down that information. And then the last one I've mentioned already is the Emergency Coordination Center conference calls. We have another technology that goes out by text alert, and this is through the Everbridge program. And this is where local individuals can sign up to get emergency alerts on their phone. And so the county emergency managers can send out more specific information to their local residents through this Everbridge text alerts. So that, if one community knows that they're going to have a larger impact, or the forecaster saying that they have a larger impact, they can let their people know. And there's a number of different ways that we also can alert the public during these events. Some communities have tsunami sirens, but we don't have a centralized coordinated tsunami siren program because the Oregon coast, you can't hear the sirens very far if it's a windy day, and it's almost always a windy day on the Oregon coast. But some communities have them. And we also have, different call down services. We get it out to the media as much as possible. And there's a lot of, peer-to-peer information sharing out there. Next slide. So when we're looking at the response to this, it's important to understand that in Oregon, we get two different types of tsunamis. We get the local tsunami from the Cascadia subduction zone earthquake, and we get distant tsunamis. And it seems like since I started working here, we've had a distant tsunami, or the possibility of a distant tsunami from an earthquake somewhere around the Pacific Basin almost every year. And this has given us a great opportunity to practice our response over time and evolve along with the technology. But some of our past distant tsunami events that we've had, for instance, the 1964 Alaska Good Friday earthquake and tsunami, that killed 4 people on the Oregon coast. And that event really sparked a lot of the development of tsunami response in Oregon. And then the 2011 Japan event, that was a very significant event. We were seeing between 2 and 3 meters of height when it reached Oregon. Luckily, it was a peak low tide when most of that surge was coming in. Otherwise, we probably would have seen inundation that day. We did not see much inundation that day, but we had millions of dollars worth of damages in several different ports and harbors on the south end of the coast. And then 2022, this was the volcano, the Hunga-Tonga volcano down in the South Pacific. And this really kind of opened our eyes that maybe we need to expand what kind of originating events we look at for possible tsunamis, because we did not know that a volcano in the South Pacific could cause a tsunami that reaches Oregon. And then, of course, the Kamchatka event this summer. So we do a lot of public education on the coast. We are constantly doing public outreach events, working with our local partners, giving them information to share. We started a couple of years ago a new preparedness program called Be 2 Weeks Ready, where we train local people to share this information out. For instance, if someone in the neighborhood wants to get their neighborhoods better prepared, they can get trained in the Be 2 Weeks Ready and hold that program. And And because when we're looking at tsunami response in Oregon, really it's about managing behavior most of the time, because we're not dealing with the earthquake. We're only dealing with the much smaller waves from those distant tsunamis. And what we want to avoid is what we saw in 2011. You know, people heard a tsunami was coming, and they tried to drive inland really quickly. And this was early March, and we had injury accidents, you know, on the road because people were driving really fast. So we really keyed our education outreach to really promote the fact that we get two types of tsunamis, and it's two types of responses. If you feel the earthquake, that's Cascadia, and you don't wait for an alarm or an alert to get to high ground, and you take as many people along with you as possible. But if you get a tsunami alert, that's really the good news, because you have at least 3.5 hours before our closest source could have a tsunami hitting our shores. And all of this response sits within sort of an ecosystem of making plans. I'm currently working on a volcano coordination plan right now. So we'll take that plan and we will exercise that plan this fall with a Three Sisters volcanoes scenario. That will be a recovery exercise. And then we do a lot of training around this. So when we have a response, that's the product and that's the outcome of this planning, this training, this exercise, this whole ecosystem that we have in emergency management, so that when these kinds of no-notice events happen, we can respond very quickly. Next slide. And that is my presentation. That is my email address. So feel free to reach out if you have any further questions or you want to talk more about Oregon tsunamis, earthquakes, volcanoes. I'm always happy to chat. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.